Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021. I'm your host, Mark Hillary, and this is the first CX Files podcast of 2021. Now, we're going to start the new year with a really insightful discussion about automation, bots, and digital transformation in CX. Victor van Baal is the go-to-market lead and MD of Qelp at Sykes Digital Services, SDS, and Amahl Williams is a director of SDS. Victor's based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and Amahl is based just outside of Boston, Massachusetts in the US. Victor and Amahl caught up with me to discuss digital CX in 2021. Okay, let's go straight to the interview. Okay, Victor, so Qelp has now become SDS. I know you blogged on this recently to explain the reasons why you changed brand. And I know you've been working with Sykes for a few years now, but could you summarize this move for the podcast listeners, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sykes has been acquiring various businesses over the last couple of years on a journey to become a customer experience management company, based on the heritage of 40 years of contact center experience, really making sure that we enable a digital customer experience. So Sykes Digital Services is really a get-together of all of the acquired businesses in this space, and consists of Symphony Ventures, Qelp, Townspratt, and Inside Analytics. So what we're doing is we're bringing to market that in one brand, making sure that we bring focused transformation to our clients, focused on self-service, focused on automation, focused on digital learning.
Okay. And clearly, Amahl, that plays into some of the changes in innovation and transformation we've been seeing, because it seems that everybody had these kind of 5-year plans, but the pandemic has made everybody accelerate everything. I mean, have you been observing that from the companies you've been working with?
Absolutely. People have been using terms like unprecedented. I'm trying not to use COVID during too many podcasts this year. I'm trying to avoid it if I can. But if I want to codify kind of what's happened, right, and I'm hearkening back to my IT background, because for internship, I used to work help desk. And this was back in Windows 95 days. So emergencies then versus emergencies now. So there's 3 kind of stages, right? There's the first stage, this is real. This is going to be longer than what we think it's going to be. Right. So we're scrambling. We're trying to reallocate resources. We're occupying a lot of IT's times. Our business priorities have changed. Budgets become frozen. Just all of the things that happened. That was first wave. Right. Second wave is going to be what we call the now normal. So I've moved some of my employees around. I've changed my environment. I'm trying to get back to as close to business as usual as possible, hit my target numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think we've reached the third stage yet. So for me, what I've seen from a shifting of priorities is retail customers, for the ones who have had a large spike in e-commerce, their appetite for digital transformation has heightened. So where before it was kind of a casual awareness around it, saying, hey, I want to automate maybe some of my supply chain, maybe automate chargebacks, maybe automate, we used to call it sneaker net, right? I get an order, I type it in and enter it. They're taking a huge focus on that, because think about it this way. I won't mention them by name, but if you're fortunate enough to beat Amazon in a contract bid for federal government, how many more phone calls are you going to get on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, right? And if you have a team that's set at 1,000 headcount, how many of those calls should be redirected before they get online? Can you handle the spikes? Can you handle all of these things? So what I saw, which was pretty interesting, is that software companies are adopting at about the same rate, but there's been a huge spike in retail e-commerce players. And for some of those folks who are proactive, they were ready for this, right? And for the folks that are reactive, they have no other choice but to tackle this, because they understand that it's going to impact not only their acquisition strategy, but their retention strategy when that chair comes in, red as opposed to blue. So it's exciting. But I think the pre-COVID adopters, software and tech, BFSI, manufacturing, they haven't really changed much. But the 2 industries that I've seen that has the most new appetite or increased appetite since the pandemic have probably been e-commerce platforms, retail specifically, and then I would probably say healthcare companies, especially if they're doing like e-billing. If you're trying to compete with large e-billing platforms, a percentage of their headcount is digital, which is very impressive. There's huge orders that are coming in around that. So it's really exciting times. I think if you're stuck in one of those industries that's not taking on the challenge, it's kind of frustrating. So if you're in energy and utilities, good luck to you. But the rest, they seem to be still having this healthy appetite because they realize how important it is to the success of their business.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I saw McKinsey saying that in healthcare, just in the US alone, you're going from an industry, a telehealth industry that was, a few $1 billion a year to possibly like $250 billion opportunity. So the changes in some industries are going to be huge.
Well, I can't make excuses to my wife about missing physicals anymore. I mean, we have camera. I have to take the call from home. But yes, great points.
Yeah. Now, one area that I've seen changing really fast is self-service. And I mean, that's, of course, a sweet spot for you guys where you've been working for some time. Customers are increasingly trying to fix their own problems. They're going to Google, they're searching the corporate web pages. I mean, what are your thoughts on some of the changes we might see? I mean, how is this going to develop, Victor?
Well, it's becoming an integral part of the experience. What we've seen while we build our company is that it's really an afterthought. So you launch a product or a service, and there is this aha moment of, we need some form of self-service. It's not really a part of the product or service launch. So I think the really positive in the customer experience that we all have is that there's an increased focus on it, and there is an increased focus on making sure that the back office is ready to go before self-service is launched. Self-service is nothing before or when a back office is falling apart. The point that was made on one of your other podcasts around excellent tech is really, it really nails it, right? If a process falls apart, there is no self-service. If a knowledge base serves up content that is old or outdated or is not clear to the end user, the self-service is only so good. So I think that's a really positive one, and we'll see that clients and businesses will have to become increasingly impatient with the silos that they've created upon themselves that get these front end or these customer facing experiences out there. So we'll see a lot of teams, marketing, sales, and service converge into digital teams, and that's a great thing, of course, because nowadays everybody is spending so much time behind their screens, even more so than we ever thought. And all of our experiences start with a search, start with Google asking, okay, how can I, what's the best, where is probably not so high at this point in time because where is home, but it's really all around making sure that service and customer experience professionals learn how to operate in a Google first environment. I think that's for me the big one, and it's really fun to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, and I think that it's really interesting that you're saying that it's now becoming an integral part of the CX strategy, because, like you were saying, it's just been so often a kind of like afterthought. Let's put some FAQ on the website, this kind of thing, and it often just makes the experience worse when it's not planned.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, and it makes the agent who has to pick up the call after a failed self-service attempt. It makes the agent's life so much worse if those experiences are not consistent, right? So if the knowledge base where the agent is reading from, or the script, or the whatever training database that agent is using is not consistent with what the client or the customer is seeing on the website, that's like, we all know this friction, right? This is not what I'm seeing, right? This famous phrase that we all use in our speech to text analysis. It's super important. We all know that the battleground is loyalty, right? We're all loyal to experiences, not to brands, and this is one to crack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amahl, you mentioned about some specific industries that are transforming much faster than ever planned before. I mean, specifically areas like retail and healthcare. But are there any sort of common threads like trends or particular types of change? Where maybe other e-commerce players all trying to do the same thing at the same time?
So it's interesting. So when I talk about e-com, right, I'm not talking about pure just e-com, but having an e-com component to your business, right? So a lot of the customers are brick and mortar traditional retail companies where at the onset of the pandemic, let's say you have a US presence or you have global presence even, and you're trying to expand in Canadian markets, just for example, right? The reality is that the healthy e-commerce brands may have delayed or postponed their market entry pieces, but the ones that were struggling have called them off completely, right? So when we're looking at an adoption rate, I won't say the name of the brand, but they're here in my state. And most of your favorite retail stores that you go to when you want to buy stuff to like lounge around at your home, that's what they own, right? So my wife calls it the professional tuxedo. And so it's, very nice and neat up here. And then you might have sweats or shorts or something else, below the camera angle. And so what they're seeing is that, and I was actually surprised. The COE there started with 30 people, and I met them 2 years ago. And it was mostly IT folks with developer backgrounds in other fields besides RPA, right? So it's let's get the proper training in based upon role. Let's get some robots into production. Let's automate, what have you. Fast forward to 2021, and this is purely based, and it's funny, she said it to me directly. She's like, I don't know if the pandemic didn't happen, if our organization would look like this. So first they start to notice the shift, right? And for whatever reason, their segmentation is what it is. Their customers behave the way that it behaves, but they get a huge spike in e-commerce, which inherently increases their adoption rate. So what it goes from is kind of the 30 people, nobody's an expert. The Center of Excellence right now, including lines of business, is over 100 people in 18 months. And if you had asked me at the time when I first met them, I'm like, I don't know if they're going to complete training. I don't know what's going to happen to them. These guys won't be the bell cow. I literally told her, I said, her first name is Emily. I said, listen, you might want to apply for an award because I think you guys might qualify this year at the end of the year. And, for most of the time she was talking to me about, and this is amazing. Think about this. They had 30 developers. They were questioning the value of RPA to now this year, they're talking about, I think we need managed services to manage our robots in production. Right. And a large part of that driver was the customer behavior, which informed it. And they weren't thinking about it as, I wonder if we have to, when you get a spike in orders on a channel that doesn't traditionally lead your revenue at a retail company, you focus all of your energy on that channel, right? Customer sat, like Victor called out, order time, delivery, exchange, return, all of those things. And so for them, it was a blessing. For some of the other folks that might be their partners that are delivering, in a single product category, some of them don't have the same kind of experience on the e-commerce platforms. And a lot of that has to do with my experience at brick and mortar. It's funny, they're competitors. And I was just like, I want to see what they have to say. 2 companies are thriving because the e-commerce spiked when the pandemic happened. 1 company is stalling because they didn't have, for whatever reason, it could be customer sat, like Victor called out before, but they didn't have that rise. And so I think what's nice about the pandemic, if there are nice things about it, is that for the companies who are in a position, meaning you have core capabilities, you have partnership relationships with the right kind of partners who can help you scale in a specific period of time towards your business goals, you're able to stand up your digital capability in a reasonable amount of time. For the 87% of the folks that don't have that as a part of their reality, the publicly traded ones, we know how they're doing. So I think the good news is that for the folks that were invested prior, they understand how far away they are and they understand how to take the action to kind of get there. For the folks who are still kind of teetering on the edge and haven't figured it out, I do think there is a distinct advantage for them to look at changing the way that they do business so that their operating costs don't have to go up year over year.
Yeah, and I guess nobody would call the pandemic nice, but
right.
It's clearly been proven, throughout the history of business that when you have a crisis, that drives innovation. I mean, it forces people to look at what they're doing and change.
Right.
And I mean, this is the first CX Files podcast of 2021. So I just wanted to ask both of you for some ideas on what we should be looking for this year. And I think let's start with you, Amahl, because, you're clearly focused on automation, RPA, bots, so maybe if you could answer in that area, what's going to be exciting this year? And then Victor could give the more broad SDS sort of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll borrow from Gartner and I'll borrow from my last call with Data Robot. I spoke to them before I spoke with you. right? And I have 2 points that I'm allowed to share, but they had a great year, right? One client, Bank of America, $19 million deal over 2 years. I mean, that's just impressive. And then they have the Warp Speed program under the current federal administration for $40 million investment over the next 4 years in machine learning, NLP, and artificial intelligence. So we do realize that, and those two companies are different, right? KYC, mobile banking, PPP loans, all of these economic factors that force Bank of America to center its customers, right? I have my own opinion. I'm a Santander customer. I won't bash either. But Bank of America is usually a leader from a tech standpoint. They're leading again, right? And they're using the tool for modeling. So customer acquisition, retention, churn, and what have you. Data Robot's a direct recipient of that, right? If you're looking at the federal government program, the federal government has about an employee base where 27% of those people are going to be retiring in the next 3 to 4 years. I don't know what impact COVID had on that, but that was their reality before the pandemic. And they're investing $40 million in machine learning, data science, and artificial intelligence. That's a huge check to me, right? When I'm looking at health as far as it's concerned. So the reason why I called that out is I believe if you look at the stack for RPA or robotics in general, you have RPA, right? My friend calls it the clickety-click. So software behaving like humans, right? Tier 2 is the thinkity-think, right? Or the readity-read. He's from the UK. That's the cognitive in the middle, right? And then in my opinion, the commercial application of artificial intelligence or machine learning or connected technology plus reasoning, rationale, or something else along these lines, not including human in the loop, is the tier that's right above that. Companies who are prepared are investing in that side of the business right now, right? Large retailers, large healthcare because they want to try to reduce the risk around expensive patients. If you can see the patient coming, the cost of care goes down, right? There's an impressive data point, and I don't want to get it wrong, but it's about less than 20% of the patient population is responsible for 80% of the cost. And if we can use machine learning and predictive analytics and modeling and what have you to identify who those individuals who are greatest at risk, we can reduce the cost of doing business, right? It's commercial application. So I think for me, I'm really excited about ML and AI and NLP because I used to do that before I got into robotics. It actually is what got me into robotics. The first demo I saw was a robot. A robot did in 30 minutes what 3 or 4 or 5 disgruntled analysts could do over an extended weekend if they were really motivated, right? So that robot did an analysis, over 1,000 analyses in 30 minutes. And I remember thinking to myself, being like, hey, Amahl, you need a new job, right? Because if a bot can do this, what else can they do? So I think when we look at these things, I wanted to grab the Gartner trend because this is my favorite one, but it's trending topics by business, priority, and preparedness. So the 3 high priorities for them in this year are going to be customer-facing AI, big data, and customer activism, right? Right below that is rising CRM costs. What they're actually prepared to do, right? So what they have to do versus what they're prepared to do. In the high preparedness category, almost all of the larger enterprises talked about customer-facing AI and trying to mitigate for the rising costs of CRM, right? So how do I mitigate? This is why partners sometimes get emotional around connected RPA. For advanced applications, whether it's your close process, whether it's, I don't want to say ERP because they're not as much at risk, but your adjacent technologies, when you use automation or robots and you externalize that data set, right, and you apply business logic to it, the robot is a super user. The robot is fluent and it's very active. So you as a business person, if you sort on that line item and you say, hey, look at this application, it's the most expensive, I have the most users. What you end up being able to do when you automate is you can reduce the number of users that interact with the system. That's one. So your cost line, it goes down. You have a greater level of automation. You take it from 20 or 25% out of the box, because that's what they tout, up to maybe 80 to 90%, including human in the loop. But also what you're doing there as well is you're not having to have not only as many licenses, but you can have premium licenses in a lesser amount and still achieve greater business outcome. So that's why some of them are hesitant. That's why some of them want to talk about becoming their own RPA agencies, but it's a very tangible reality. The hardest problem that we have with applications as they age, if we don't retire them, is that finding somebody who's really awesome at Sage, right? Or SAP and all of its different nuances, right? Those people are not only expensive, but they're a rarity. And so what we do and how we close the gap, right, is by leveraging RPA not only to do the manual things, the copy, the paste, right, the extract, the transform, and the load, but we're also using it to help companies maximize their investment in the adjacent technologies that people are using every single day to perform their tasks.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. And I saw this year, because of the CARES Act, many American states were desperate for COBOL programmers.
Yep, you got it. I mean, it's again, I'm a marketing degree and I have an IT degree, right? And I thought I was going to run a website business when I graduated, right? So I have HTML in my background, right? The day before I graduate, Dreamweaver came out by Microsoft, and I was like, oh, great. I think I'm going to go find another job. So I think the nice part about it is that for people who have the acronyms and all the certifications, those are obviously still valuable. But I think if I'm looking at it from a company perspective, how do I mitigate risk around the availability of capabilities? The answer is obviously digital transformation, automation, digitization.
That's fantastic. So Victor, for the broader SDS business then, what are you looking at for this year?
Well, yeah, it's a dangerous time to do predictions, right? So I'm not gonna play that game. But if you reflect on what we've seen last year and how that will change our customers' lives and our customers' lives has changed. It's a phenomenal time to be in digital. My parents, who are in their 60s, have placed their first online order about 6 months ago. And by now, they are ordering their groceries through an app on a weekly basis. So if you look at that, how fast that went, how proficient they are now, and how comfortable they are, that's not going to go away. So the impact of what we've had over the last year is not going to go away. So all of our clients and brands that we interact with, they will have to play along with it because this is significant. At the same time, hopefully we can soon go back seeing each other again, and that means that practically every company is becoming a healthcare company. Right? We're now used to social distancing. We're used to not being close to each other. That also means that companies will have to adapt to that, and they'll have to see more. What are the good things out of this? So all of this, hopefully, and this is more a hope than something that is a trend or it's a trend, but a prediction, but is that we get into more inclusive CX design, making sure that all of the data points that are available to us, all of the tech that's available leads to real personalization. And personalization in CX has been a long trend, but it's done really well by very few. So inclusive design, making sure that you have your customers connect with you in meaningful ways, and making sure that you really design a journey based on the uniqueness of each individual user that you have or each individual client. That's hopefully going to rise a lot, given that we have a broad set of users at this time, because everybody is online. And the other one, and that's more a hope, is that we'll get sustainability back on the agenda. That we really look at and we really start looking back at okay, what are the brands that want to have a positive impact on our lives? And that plays back in customer experience.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people, or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.